It started with a smell. Not the kind you'd notice right away. Not rotten, not foul, just off. Like metal and rot mixed with something you couldn't quite name. It lingered low near the ground and always strongest near my driveway, especially on humid mornings. Most people probably wouldn't have paid attention to it. But I wasn't most people. I spent 30 years working as a municipal engineer, dealing with everything from faulty sewage lines to methane leaks under cul-de-sacs. I knew what dangerous smelled like even when it whispered. At first, I thought maybe a small animal had died under the crawl space again. Wouldn't be the first time a possum curled up and never got back up. But the scent didn't come from under the house. It came from the ground. More specifically, the soil along the HOA-maintained sidewalk that cut across the front edge of my property. I brought it up at the monthly meeting. You know, the kind, fluorescent-lit folding chairs over sugared lemonade and the usual suspects complaining about mailbox paint codes. I stood up, waited my turn, and said, "I think there might be a gas leak under Lot 23's sidewalk area. I've smelled it for the past few mornings. It's faint, but it's there." The room went quiet for a second, and then Jason Landry, our HOA president, chuckled like I'd just claimed I saw Bigfoot watering my begonias. "I think we'd know if there was a leak, Tom," he said, brushing imaginary lint from his too-tight golf polo. "The board hasn't approved any gas line work in that section." "That was exactly my point," I said. "And exactly what scared me." "Well, someone's been digging," I replied calmly. "There are disturbed areas near the sidewalk, not just roots. Trenching. I know what it looks like." Jason leaned forward, his voice tightening. "Are you accusing the HOA of something?" I didn't blink. "I'm telling you there's something wrong. And if it's gas, it's not something to ignore." I left that meeting with exactly what I expected. Eye rolls. A warning notice for unsubstantiated disruption of HOA proceedings. And an email 2 days later, stating that any further accusations without evidence would be met with fines. That's how the game is played in Maple Brook Estates. The HOA doesn't take kindly to being questioned, especially not by people like me. Retired, widowed with too much time and too many facts on my hands. Most of my neighbors avoided conflict with the board. They just wanted to live peacefully and not deal with the petty tyrannies that came with living in a covenant-controlled community. But I knew what buried mistakes could cost, and I had already lost too much in my life to stay silent again. I didn't tell them the full reason I was on edge. 10 years earlier, in another town, a pipeline failure had taken 3 lives. One of them was a woman named Meredith, my wife. She had been helping a friend paint a nursery when a poorly repaired gas line under the home gave way. The report said the ignition source was a flicked light switch. Instant, total, irreversible. So yes, I knew the smell, and I knew what it meant. Still, I needed more than my nose to push this further. Over the next week, I started keeping a log. I took notes on wind direction, humidity, scent intensity. I snapped pictures with timestamps, small holes in the ground, fresh fill-in dirt near the curb. I even set up a trail cam hidden behind my hedges, pointed right at the sidewalk. 3 nights later, it caught something. At 2:13 a.m., a crew rolled in. No markings on the trucks, no cones, no permits. They worked under portable lights and headlamps, silent except for the occasional clang of tools and hiss of pressure equipment. They stayed for just under an hour, and when they left, the trench was gone, filled, padded, and dusted with grass seed like it had never been there. I copied the footage and uploaded it to an encrypted cloud account. Then I forwarded a still to the HOA email, politely requesting an explanation. I didn't expect a response. I got one anyway, though not from the board. The next morning, someone left a note wedged into the slats of my fence. Plain white paper, no envelope, just 6 words in thick black marker. "Mind your business or else." I read it twice, then I burned it. They wanted silence. What they didn't know was I'd lived through fire before, and I wasn't afraid to walk straight back into it if it meant saving someone else. Something was buried under Maple Brook, and whatever it was going to blow one way or another. The next HOA meeting felt different. The usual attendees were there, Mrs. Dupree with her 3 little dogs yapping under her chair, the Tron family whispering quietly in the back, and a few new faces I didn't recognize. Probably newer residents just trying to get involved. But there was something else, tension. It clung to the air like humidity before a storm. Jason Landry stood at the front, clipboard in hand, smile too wide, voice too chipper. "Before we get started on community events and seasonal finds," he said, tapping his pen like a gavel, We'd like to announce an exciting infrastructure improvement for our neighborhood. I leaned forward slightly. As you all know, safety is one of our top priorities, Jason continued. So the board has approved an internal initiative to improve energy efficiency and prepare for future green upgrades. That includes laying preliminary groundwork for natural gas conversion down the line. You'll see minor sidewalk access and soil testing over the coming weeks. Nothing disruptive. My fingers curled into fists on my lap. He didn't say which contractor. He didn't say when. He didn't say with whose permission. Someone in the audience raised their hand. Wait, I thought the city had to approve gas line work. Jason grinned. These aren't operational lines. Think of this as infrastructure preparation, future-proofing. It's within the HOA's rights on common property. It was slippery phrasing, dangerous phrasing. I stood. Will you be filing excavation permits with the city? I asked. Jason paused for just a second, then smiled as if he were glad I asked. For now, Tom, we're staying within HOA jurisdiction. Nothing invasive. You'll get a letter if your property is affected. That was a lie. Every property would be affected if pressurized lines went in, even inactive ones. Because inactive doesn't mean safe. It means untested, undocumented, and possibly volatile. After the meeting, I approached him quietly, firmly. You know you can't legally install gas conduits without a dig notification and safety clearance, right? Even prep work has to be declared. He didn't look at me, just flipped through his clipboard. Tom, you're retired. Maybe it's time you stop worrying about things that aren't your concern. I took out my phone, showed him a still from the trail cam. I've got footage, I said. 2 a.m. trenching, no safety signage, no crew identification, no city permits filed. Jason's eyes darted to the image, then back up. You shouldn't be filming board activities without consent. Board activities? I raised an eyebrow. Then you're admitting the board authorized it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You keep pushing this, you'll regret it. You're not the authority here anymore. He walked off before I could answer, but I already had his answer. In that one defensive sentence, he tied the HOA directly to the work I documented, and now I had a target. That night, I reviewed the HOA bylaws again, top to bottom. Section 14.7 specifically prohibited any structural or subterranean modification to common or adjacent property without approval by city code enforcement and notice to adjacent homeowners. If they were trenching anywhere near private driveways or fences, and they were, they'd already violated multiple lines of their own charter. City law was even clearer. Every utility excavation, gas or otherwise, required a 72-hour pre-dig notification under Blue Stake law, even exploratory drilling, even if you were just future-proofing. So I made a few calls. First, to the city planning office, where I still had friends from my working years. They checked the permit filings. Nothing for gas conduit and Maple Brook estates. Not for that week, not for the past 6 months. Then I called the Utilities Oversight Division. Any active excavation or pressurized line installations have to be flagged to us, the clerk said. If someone's bypassing that, it's illegal and extremely dangerous. I emailed her the trail cam footage. Jesus, she muttered when she called me back. I'll escalate this. Don't confront them further. Okay, I said, but I knew better. In HOA land, silence was an invitation for escalation, and I had just pushed back. The next morning, I stepped outside to find a stack of notices zip-tied to my mailbox. 4 violations, all backdated. Unapproved fence modification, garbage bins left visible, unsanctioned surveillance equipment, failure to submit landscaping plan. It was laughable. My fence had been unchanged for 6 years. My trash bins were behind the gate, and the surveillance equipment was a trail cam pointed at my own lawn. But that was how they operated. Paper bullets. They couldn't silence me legally, so they tried to bury me under nuisance violations. It was intimidation, thinly veiled behind HOA letterhead. I documented everything. Then I filed a formal complaint with the city inspector's office, and still the smell got stronger. By week's end, 3 more neighbors quietly admitted they'd noticed it too. One said her dog refused to walk along the southern sidewalk stretch. Another said their carbon monoxide detector had tripped once even though their home ran electric. I asked them to go on record. They all refused. No offense, one of them whispered, but we saw what they're doing to you. I can't have them targeting my kids too. It was already bigger than me. And the longer the board denied it, the more unstable it all became, literally and legally. Jason and his crew were threading a bomb beneath our feet, and it was only a matter of time before something sparked. The thing about gas leaks is they don't always shout. Sometimes they whisper until the whisper turns into a scream. That's what I kept telling myself every morning I stepped outside and caught that familiar acid tang in the air. It would hit like a faint echo drifting through the low morning mist and vanish just as quickly, but I knew it was there. Something under the ground was building pressure, and the pressure was not going to wait for permission. I had a contact in the Department of Energy Safety, a woman named Marissa Wills, who specialized in unauthorized gas infrastructure complaints. Once she got wind of our evidence, she scheduled an on-site visit within 48 hours. Except, of course, the HOA wouldn't go quietly. That same afternoon, I received an email announcing a special closed-door community meeting to discuss problematic homeowner behavior. No agenda, no transparency, just threats now aimed at turning the entire neighborhood against me. But it was too late. The fuse had already been lit. The inspections were coming. The city couldn't look away anymore. And somewhere beneath our feet, pressure was building. Something was going to blow. The only question was who would survive it. It was always the silence that gave them away. I'd spent enough years on construction sites to know the difference between sanctioned work and shadow jobs. A legal crew is noisy by necessity. Radios crackling, machinery groaning, supervisors barking OSHA codes. But what was happening under Maple Brook sidewalks wasn't that. It was quiet, too quiet, and the quieter they got, the more dangerous I knew it was becoming. 2 nights after Claire and I confronted the trench crew, I couldn't sleep. The air was thick with summer humidity, and that faint chemical tang that had become all too familiar. Around 1:30 a.m., I grabbed a flashlight and walked the perimeter of our street. I stuck to the grass and shadows, listening for the hiss of shovels or the grind of machinery. I didn't have to wait long. Near the corner of Cypress Bend, I spotted movement, a small rounded backhoe, no company logo, parked beside a pile of fresh earth. 3 men in reflective vests were huddled around what looked like a long PVC pipe, running parallel to the sidewalk. No safety cones, no flashing lights, no inspector in sight. I took a photo, then another. But something felt off. I crept closer, ducking behind a bush on the corner lot, and that's when I saw it. The pipe wasn't PVC. It was coated steel, thicker, lined with markings I recognized. Pressure-rated natural gas conduit. I froze. If they were laying pressurized lines without permits, without maps, without a single licensed technician, then we weren't just dealing with HOA arrogance anymore. We were sitting on a bomb. I texted Rick Mendoza immediately. They're laying steel gas lines. No safety gear. No license. This is officially criminal. I have photos, he replied instantly. Get clear now. I'm forwarding this to Marissa and the state fire marshal's office. Don't engage, but I couldn't leave yet. I moved to a better angle, phone tight in my hands, and caught a moment on video. One worker striking a pipe casing with a hammer, sparks flying into the dirt. My heart pounded. They were careless, rushed, likely untrained, which meant mistakes weren't just possible, they were imminent. I slipped back toward home, adrenaline surging like it hadn't since my final year on the job. At 2 a.m., I uploaded the footage to 3 separate drives and sent copies to Rick, Marissa, and my daughter, just in case. Then I sat at the kitchen table and waited for daylight. By morning, Marissa was on the phone with me. Her tone was clipped, professional, urgent. I've reviewed your footage. That line is a 2-inch steel flex with industrial-grade couplings. That's not residential supply, that's sub-main distribution. Who authorized this? No one, I said. At least not legally. She muttered something under her breath. I've escalated this to state enforcement. I'm sending a fire marshal team and utility safety inspector out within 24 hours. They'll need full access and they'll have it, I said. But you'd better come armed with more than clipboards. These people don't care about laws, and they care about control. That afternoon, I saw something new pinned to the HOA bulletin board. A glossy flyer. Community gas upgrade phase 2 underway. Thanks to our partnership with Mid-Count Energy Consulting. Maple Brook Estates is taking the next step toward green energy and self-reliance. All authorized under HOA Resolution 42B. No signatures, no permits, no votes. What chilled me most was the company name, Mid-Count Energy Consulting. I'd heard it before, tied to a lawsuit in another town. Their crew had caused a backfill rupture that led to a $2.3 million settlement. I printed the flyer and slid it into my growing binder labeled Evidence, Maple Brook Hazard Ops. By evening, trucks arrived again. This time they had the mid-count logo, but no license numbers, no crew lists, no posted permits. And now something else had changed. Neighbors were starting to whisper. They dug behind my fence, one woman said quietly while walking her dog. They broke a sprinkler line, another told me at the grocery store. Said it was part of an energy upgrade. People were waking up, not all at once, but enough. That night, I sent out a private email titled Urgent What Your HOA Isn't Telling You About the Gas Lines. I attached photos, maps, and footage. They are installing unauthorized, dangerous infrastructure under your homes, I wrote simply. Within 24 hours, I had 26 replies. Some scared, some furious, but all asking the same thing: what can we do? That was the crack in the armor. The sound of the dam beginning to break. The day before the explosion was eerily calm. No trucks, no crews, no clipboards. It felt like the neighborhood had finally exhaled. But I didn't trust it. Silence, I knew, meant one of two things. Either they were pausing before the final push, or they were done, and if they were done and the pipes were pressurized without testing or oversight, then we weren't just in danger. We were inside the blast zone. That night, Marissa texted, "State inspector arrives 9 a.m. tomorrow. Final legal stop work notice being prepared. Stay alert." I replied with a thumbs up, but my gut told me we wouldn't make it that far. Claire made pasta, her favorite comfort meal, and asked quietly, "Do you think it's going to happen soon?" I didn't answer. By midnight, the smell was back, stronger than ever, seeping from cracks in the curb. Not just near my house, everywhere. And then at 10:04 a.m. it happened. The windows began to tremble. A low rumble rolled through the ground, followed by a sharp crack that made the floor jump. Then came the sound, not a fiery boom, but a deep, terrifying roar from below. An impact wave slammed through the house, knocking photos off the walls and blowing open the back door. Claire screamed. The lights flickered. Then came another detonation, farther down the street. Sirens blared before I could even find my shoes. When we stumbled outside, chaos was everywhere. 2 blocks down, flames painted the sky orange. Smoke churned through hedges. Car alarms wailed. A 30-foot stretch of road had vanished into a crater. 3 homes were burning. A 4th had collapsed. A tree split in half across the road. And that smell, raw metallic gas, filled the air. Then I saw him, Jason Landry, HOA president, the architect of this madness, standing at the edge of the blast zone in his bathrobe. His face pale, streaked with soot. His hair was singed on one side. He looked at me like I was the ghost of every warning he'd ignored. We locked eyes. He didn't say a word. I ran to the fire captain, told him everything, the illegal lines, the photos, the company. His face hardened. "You're saying this was avoidable?" I nodded. "Not just avoidable. Reported weeks ago." He swore under his breath and called it in. By the time the flames died, the truth had begun to surface. The media arrived at dawn, cameras, drones, and stunned reporters circling the wreckage like vultures. I didn't wait for them. I walked straight up to the nearest camera and said the words I'd been preparing for weeks. This was not an accident. This was negligence, and we tried to stop it. By noon, headlines were everywhere. Gas explosion levels HOA Street. Homeowners say they warned board for weeks. And soon after, Mid-Count Energy Consulting under investigation. But none of it could undo what was lost. 3 families displaced. 2 injured, and 1 neighborhood changed forever. The neighborhood woke up to a truth they could no longer ignore. The people meant to protect them had nearly destroyed everything. Maple Brook wasn't a neighborhood anymore. It was a disaster zone. Yellow tape, burnt homes, unmarked vans, the aftermath of greed and negligence. I hadn't slept. None of us had. Claire kept moving, helping others, her focus sharper than ever. By morning, I was in a mobile command trailer facing the fire marshal, investigators, and Marissa Wills. The blast had started exactly where I warned, unauthorized piping intersecting a live electrical conduit. Every fear I'd had come true. Marissa said they were filing injunctions against both the HOA and Mid-County Energy. Forged documents, no permits, no safety checks. It was all unraveling. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was exhaustion. Outside, neighbors who once avoided me now approached with gratitude and regret. One even said, "You saved lives." The truth was spreading. My short interview on the evening news went viral, and suddenly people from other towns, engineers, lawyers, victims of corrupt HOAs, started reaching out. The silence was broken, but when corruption is exposed, it fights back. Anonymous messages, threats, reporters camping near my house, all trying to twist the story. My lawyer, Rick, reminded me, "Let them dig, we have the truth," and we did. I had documented everything, emails, videos, letters, stored safely in multiple places. Then the investigation widened. Mid-County had done illegal work for other communities too. Millions of dollars in unapproved projects. The fraud was bigger than anyone guessed. When I testified before a state subcommittee, one official asked, "Why didn't you just walk away?" I told her the truth. Because my wife died in a gas explosion. I wasn't going to let it happen again. That statement changed everything. More whistleblowers came forward. One woman handed me proof of similar crimes in her neighborhood. I realized this wasn't just about Maple Brook. It was about hundreds of others living under silent danger. Then came the arrests. HOA board members, contractors, even Jason Landry, the man who had tried to silence me, all taken in under charges of fraud and public endangerment. The HOA was dismantled. The city suspended its charter and replaced it with a safety-led trust. For the first time in years, Maple Brook belonged to its people again. Rebuilding began. Volunteers came from all over to clear debris. Kids sold lemonade to raise money for neighbors' gardens. Claire started a safety group, giving away carbon monoxide detectors. The spirit of the community was reborn, not from fear, but from solidarity. Months later, the scars still showed. Cracked driveways, faded ash marks. But there was laughter again. New homes rose with proper permits. The HOA was gone for good, replaced by a neighborhood trust with real oversight. Freedom felt strange at first. No more warning letters. No more rules about mailbox color or lawn height. I painted mine bright red. Claire planted wildflowers. People smiled when they passed. One day, a kid doing a school project called me a community hero. I told him, "I'm just someone who got tired of being quiet." When he asked what I'd change if I could go back, I said, "Nothing. Sometimes the only way forward is through fire." That night, Claire and I walked to the spot where the explosion happened. A bronze plaque stood there now. In memory of the night the ground broke and the truth rose up with it. May we never bury our voices again. Claire looked at me and said softly, "Ready to rest now, Dad?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think we've earned it. No parades, no headlines, and just peace. Fight in the windows again, hammers building instead of hiding. Justice, I realized, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like sleeping soundly, knowing the ground beneath you is safe. Not perfect, but safe, and no HOA letter can ever take that away."